Hi everyone, welcome to another Hatton's Model Railways live stream, and today we're taking a bit of a closer look at some of the items in the Hornby 2021 catalogue. Now, I'm sure many of you have already watched our video showing some of the main announcements from this range, including the many new tooling locomotives, rolling stock and wagons included there too. But after having a look through the catalogue, with over 360 items available in this year's range, it really took time to see just some of the hidden gems that are included in this catalogue too. There are things that you might not see on your first glance through the listings on our website, or if you've got a copy of the physical catalogue, but they are just as important a part of this year's range, with items coming back into the catalogue after many years away, or some new developments and some brand new liveries and opportunities to get models onto your layout too. So I thought I'd show you some of the favourites I found by having a closer look in the catalogue and showing you just how they can fit into your model railway. All of the models I'm showing here today are available to pre-order right now from our website, and if you want to click the link in the description, you find all the information on prices, release dates, digital statuses, etc. in there. Otherwise, we'll get stuck in, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them throughout the stream or leave a comment below in the video's description. Let's get started then, and I think one to really start on, it's one many people have been asking for quite some time, is the return of the BR Standard 6MT Clan, as you can see here on the screen now. This has come back in two different guises. This has come back in both the early emblem and the late crest BR green liveries, as carried by these locomotives in real life. We have here Clan MacDonald in the early emblem colour scheme, and Clan Stewart coming up there for you now in the late crest green colour scheme too. These are locos that came out originally about 2008, 2009, and although they were a very popular model that sold out quite quickly, they were curiously left out of many catalogues for years to come, and they've certainly become a sought-after model amongst collectors. Many of you will want to fill the gap in your collection of standard class locomotives, and these, being the smallest Pacific locomotives built by British Railways, were quite an obscure locomotive, with only 10 of them built in real life, mainly working in Scotland, but occasionally getting forays down into the northwest of England there too. These locomotives did still capture the hearts of quite a few enthusiasts, and when this model came out originally, it was a popular release, so it's fantastic to see it back in the range after a 10-year gap. This is a sought-after model, as we've said, and already pre-orders are quite high, so a lot of you are noticing that the clans have reappeared in the range. But as it's not a new tooling model, sometimes it can get hidden further down the list, so I thought I'd give it a bit of a showcase here to say welcome back to the clan and welcome back to the range. So that's looking like a really good model there. It was a fantastic model when it was tooled up with a full 8-pin digital socket, a 5-pole motor in the loco, and of course all-wheel drive on that locomotive too. So really is worth a closer look. Heading down to the other end of the scale now, we can see another locomotive returning to the range, but this time in quite a different guise than it's carried previously. I'm sure many of you will recognise this as a certain familiar 060 fictional tank engine, but this time it has returned to the range in its more natural form as a London Brighton South Coast Railway E2 tank locomotive. This was tooled up by Hornby in the late 1970s and incorporated into the Thomas and Friends range, so it's returning to its spiritual home there as part of the railroad range being released this year. It is actually the first time I've certainly seen anyway that a pre-grouping liveried locomotive is being made available for budget modelers in this particular colour scheme. And although in real life it is a London Brighton South Coast Railway locomotive, I'm not quite sure why Hornby have chose to put it in the South East Chatham colour scheme instead, but it really does look quite attractive. And again, it gives a great opportunity there for those who may be picking up items such as our Genesis coaches in the Southeastern Chatham livery to get a locomotive to haul them that's available at a great budget price there too. So I'm really pleased to see the E2 heading back into the range, and maybe in future years we may see that in liveries such as the London, Brighton, South Coast Railway colour scheme and the British Rail and Southern colour schemes that these locomotives carried there too. Heading over to slightly larger steam locomotives, we see further liveries coming through for more recently released toolings, including the popular large Prairie locomotives, which are getting 2 new liveries as part of the 2021 catalogue. We can see here the BR line green with the early emblem on this 5101 class locomotive, and there is also a 61XX being produced in BR black with the late crest on there too. So again, adding further liveries and variations to the popular Prairie locomotives. With only 4 liveries produced so far, these 2 new additions give some more range and opportunities to getting these onto your layout. And as we said at the time of release, we were expecting Hornby to announce some more liveries on these particular locomotives, and that is something they have done. We've also got other additional liveries on new tooling models, such as the BR Standard 2, the Hush Hush, and the Thomson Pacifics to look forward to also. And of course, you can check out that link below to find out a little bit more. Heading over to diesels now, we see a return for the Railroad Deltic locomotives, returning as part of the Railroad Plus range. We've got 2 distinct liveries coming back into the fray here, with Ballymoss number D9018 in the BR two-tone green with small yellow panels, perfect for you 1960s modelers, and 55013, the Black Watch, in the later BR blue livery from the 1970s. So this is formerly the Lima Deltic, which is now part of the Hornby range. It's been upgraded with a 5-pole motor and a digital socket in there too. So it is welcome as part of the Railroad range. But this time, these 2 releases are a little bit different. These come fully fitted with TTS sound decoders, recreating the iconic Deltic noise with the Napier hum of the power units included in the locomotives. This is the first time we've been aware of a Deltic TTS sound chip. It's not available separately at the moment, but Hornby in the past have released the chips on their own as a separate item a number of years after including them in locomotives. So if you are looking for a great Deltic sound chip at a budget price, at the moment they are only available as part of these 2 locomotives, but it may be something we see as a separate release in Hornby's catalogue in years to come. These come in at just under £90 each with the sound already pre-fitted. So if you are looking for a great budget model of one of these East Coast racehorse locomotives that were used to power some of the most famous expresses along the East Coast main line from the 1960s to the early 1980s, you can pre-order either of those models now and pick one of those up to add to your fleet. Heading as far away as possible from express locomotives now, it's fantastic to see the Sentinel rejoining the range this year too. This has been absent for a couple of years now, and we have 2 versions available to pre-order. One in a 1980s industrial livery, and this here, the 4-wheel with coupling rods variation in a really up-to-date colour scheme as used at the Hitachi rail plant in the UK to move and shunt some of the intercity express trains which are now under construction. So showing there that these small 1950s, 1960s built shunters still can have a place in the UK. You'll also see that this has gained a very partial retool for this purpose. Just in front of the cab there, you will see an outside pump which powers some of the air brakes on this locomotive, and indeed the separate couplings. You can see there too on the front of this locomotive, it does have the couplings ready to be hooked up to the more modern Class 800 trains. So it's really nice to see Hornby go into the level of detail here, and even for just a small retool, they are putting the detail into this particular locomotive. These, of course, have been outshone a little bit by the smaller 48DS and the recently announced 88DS Ruston locomotives. But this is where Hornby started with its very small shunting locomotive range of super detail models, and they do still stand the test of time even to this day. So that is something that really is worth a bit of a look, especially if you need a classic shunting locomotive to work on your modern depot there too. Heading over to multiple units, there's not a huge amount in this catalogue, but what's there really is quality releases, with of course the Pride Pendolino, the Trainbow Class 800, but one that might slip under the net is another Railroad Plus release. This is the Class 121 bubble car, representing one of the Network Rail units that ran in the late 2000s, early 2010s, used as either a route learning or a test train vehicle. As we always say with the Class 121s, you have a train in one box there. You don't need any additional vehicles, and you can run that as they ran mainly as a solo unit. They're also fantastic to add some further details to. And as part of the Railroad Plus range, you are getting a decent quality model in there. You're getting a 5-pole motor and an 8-pin socket. Not quite the level of detail we'd expect with our super detail releases, but that is reflected in the price. And the Railroad Plus emblem does state that you will get the full level of decoration on this particular model too. So that is something, again, worth a bit of a closer look. If you are a fan of the Network Rail test trains, there's been so many models coming out from a variety of different manufacturers recently, and it's great to see these heritage multiple units recorded at this part of their history in that particular model too. Taking a closer look at the HSTs, also, we have a huge amount of HSTs coming back to the range this year. We have the First Great Western Purple power cars, again, a highly requested model by many of you out there. We have the Midland Pullman service as operated by Locomotive Services Limited, and the Mark IIIs to go with that too. These complement HST power cars that are coming into stock right now, including new releases of the ScotRail 7 Cities livery. But one, I really took a moment to dig this one out, and then I realized how significant it was. It's actually just one power car on its own. This is a dummy vehicle, and in the Hornby price list, it's listed as a DVT. In the catalogue, it's listed as a DVT, so you can scan over it quite quickly. What this actually is one of the HST power cars converted in the late 1980s for use with the newly introduced Class 91 locomotives. So great to go with the new model that's coming through from Hornby. The Mark IV coaches weren't quite ready in time for the introduction of the Class 91 vehicles, so rakes of Mark IIIs and HST power cars, as you see here, were set up as surrogate DVT, so the Class 91s could work in push-pull formation. What this meant in real life is you had an electric locomotive that was capable of producing about 6,000 horsepower on one end of the train, and at the other end of the train you'd have a HST power car also capable of producing over 2,000 horsepower on its own. This was one of the fastest trains to run in the UK, not quite by design, but by what it actually ended up as in the late 1980s, with over 8,000 horsepower achievable on this particular set. It was incredible rates of acceleration, and although it didn't last too long in real life, it's great to see this commemorated. And of course, you can still put a sound decoder in this. You've got the 8-pin socket there for the sounds and the lights, but this does not come with a motor. This is reflected in the price. It comes in at just under £65. And it's also a great way if you are looking at adding a HST power car to your layout, but you don't want to buy a full set. You may not have use for the powered car. You may just want a locomotive or a power car being moved on a locomotive drag or moved between depots. This is a fantastic way to pick up one of these power cars to insert into your HST rake. Even if you just wanted a different running number, there's many different opportunities to get one of these onto your layout too. So again, everything you see here today is pre-orderable right now. I've put the product codes on the pictures, but the link in the description will take you to all of the items in the 2021 range too. Let's head over to some rolling stock. And of course, we've seen brand new tooling models come through, such as the Mark IVs, and there's definitely a resurgence for the Mark III coach within Hornby's range too. Not only as part of the HST rates we mentioned previously, but it's great to see the sleeper car come back too. This again is something that's been requested for quite some time, and they are becoming increasingly hard to find. So we see 3 new liveries coming through on these vehicles. We see 3 variations of the blue and grey colour scheme as used from 1980s onwards. We see 3 of the Intercity Swallow vehicles, again used from the 1990s right through to the early 2000s in some cases. And for the first time, we see the Caledonian sleeper colour scheme. The vehicles on this used until the withdrawal of the Mark III sleeping coaches in late 2018. So some great new options there to see the Caledonian sleeper coaches come through to work with locomotives that Hornby has already provided, such as the Class 87 and the Class 67 in these liveries. So it's fantastic to see the sleeper back in the range too, and good to see it covering the whole life of these sleeper coaches from their introduction in that initial BR blue-grey colour scheme right through to the final days there towards the end of their service in the late 2010s. Whilst we're on the theme of Mark IIIs, I want to cover a special service that ran in 2020. This was the Staycation Express. This is one of the few success stories of the UK's railways within 2020. Locomotive hauled trains returning to the Settle and Carlisle Railway, hauled by Class 47 and Class 37 diesel locomotives. These coaches were supplied from Greater Anglia after they had finished with them and withdrawn them from use. They were fully refurbished. They were first-class vehicles, and these were set up with social distancing measures inside to allow a tourist train to run along this classic route through the Yorkshire Dales. Hornby are bringing this to the range in 2021, and you are able to buy the full train here too. You have the 4 coaches, the former Greater Anglia vehicles, the Mark III coaches that we see here, with 4 different running numbers as used on the train. We have also the staff support vehicle that was used on the train there too. So heading back to our real life photo here, you can see there the 4 of those Mark III coaches and the staff coach just behind them. But one of the most important things on the front is that classic liveried BR large logo blue, Class 47 on the front there, returned to one of its original colour schemes within the last year. And that too is coming back as part of the Railroad Plus range, alongside a ScotRail liveried 47 that you can use on these particular trains. So you've got the opportunity here to model the Staycation Express. Again, one of the few success stories of the UK's railways within 2020. I took a ride myself and really enjoyed being able to get a train trip in last year, and it was fantastic to sit in some of those classic carriages hauled by a classic diesel locomotive too. And you can pick up those now. They come in at £31.50 for the different coaches, whether you're looking at the Mark IIIs or the Mark II or the full rake of them there. So you've got the product codes on the images there again, and you can find out a little bit more information too. There may be something there, as mentioned by Clanline in the chat. We may be seeing more of the Safos trains Mark IIs in the future to replicate the mainline rail tours that run by this company. Now we have some of the rolling stock there to form that. At the moment, you can form the Staycation Expresses, but who knows, we may hear discussing a 2022 announcement where we see further coaches to complement that range also. Heading over to the wagons now. Again, we've seen some great returns in this area with wagons coming back to the range that haven't been part of it for quite a few years. Some of the classic vehicles make a return that have been harder and harder to find, such as the humble low Mac Wagon, as we see here. This has been part of Hornby's range for around 20 years now, but hasn't been seen for quite some time in the catalogues. So we have 2 variations in the popular BR bauxite livery from the 1950s and 1960s that are coming through at great budget prices. So it's pretty hard to find a model of these often quite common wagons actually used in their thousands across the British rail scene in the steam era and early diesel era. So it's fantastic to see these rejoining the range again after quite a few requests from modelers. Also coming back after a number of years is the LMS style meat van that we see here, the 10-ton van. This will have full metal wheels this time round as opposed to plastic wheels on its previous release, but again is a slightly lesser quality model coming back in the railroad range and allowing people to build up some goods rakes there and van rakes for some great budget prices. This is a former Airfix range model that's now part of the Hornby range, and again hasn't been seen in the catalogue for quite some time now, so it is good to see it back in the range again. Finally, the last item we'll look at today is the ex-railroad car flat wagon that we see here. This is again appearing in the railroad range and is the former Mark 1 chassis version of the car flat used to transport cars around the country from the 1960s, although this particular livery does replicate the vehicles as in use in the 1980s. This again is a model that's been in Hornby's range for quite a few years now, but will again be a popular returnee, having been harder and harder to find over time. So this really has been a year of Hornby looking through its past catalogues, looking through its back collection of items that they have the toolings for, and returning those to the range, especially where there has been a high customer demand for them. So although the new toolings are the really exciting bit about any launch announcement, it's always worth having a closer look in the range and seeing what other items are available there too. We've still not really scratched the surface with the items that are available, and there is over 360, all of which are available to order right now from hattons.co.uk. So feel free to follow that link there to find out more information on the models I've shown you today. I hope you've enjoyed this little session. I do hope you take a closer look at some of those items and just make sure to see other items there too. If I've not mentioned your favorite item from the catalogue, please do let me know in the comments what really has taken your liking or what you're really looking forward to seeing released most. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page for all the latest model railway news and other model railway videos too. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.